He said I owed him half my company because he used to drive me to school in the 9th grade, not because he invested or helped me through college, or lifted a finger during the years I scrubbed clinic floors by hand and lived off peanut butter sandwiches, just because, once upon a time, he owned a truck and I didn't. I stood there, surrounded by flowers, applause, and a brand new sign with my name on it, while my brother dust on his jeans. Bitterness in his eyes demanded justice. My mother nodded from the crowd like it made perfect sense, and that's when I realized they hadn't come to celebrate, they'd come to collect. But I don't remember signing anything. I don't remember the moment I stopped being his little sister and became an investment he never made but expected to profit from. We were standing outside my newest clinic, the 5th in a series I'd built over 16 exhausting, relentless years. There were folding chairs on the sidewalk, champagne glasses lined up on linen-covered tables, and a banner that read, Carson Wellness, now in Brookridge. It was supposed to be a good day, until David showed up. I hadn't seen my brother in almost a year. He didn't call. He didn't write. He didn't send a single card when I opened my first clinic, or my third, or when I made the local paper last spring for providing free therapy to retired veterans. But he walked right through that crowd like he'd been there all along, like I was the one who'd forgotten him. At first, I thought he was just there to surprise me. Maybe we'd hug. Maybe it'd be awkward, but warm. Instead, he skipped the small talk and got straight to the point. You remember those mornings I drove you to high school? He said, eyes squinting like he was testing me. All those rides in the rain. I laughed. Nervous. Yeah, of course. He didn't laugh back. You wouldn't have graduated if I hadn't, he said, and if you didn't graduate, you wouldn't be here now, so I figure I deserve something back. I thought he was joking. I even waited for the punchline, but there wasn't one. That's when he said it. I want in, a cut, a share, whatever you call it. I want what's fair. I looked around at the nurses who worked for me, at the patients who were clapping a minute ago, at the reporter from the Brookridge Gazette who was scribbling in her notepad. My mother stood just behind him, arms folded, lips pursed like she'd been waiting for this moment. Not one person stepped forward. Not one person said, David, are you serious? Or Emily earned this. They just watched. And my stomach turned cold. See, the truth is, David had driven me to school for about a year and a half. He was 17. I was 14. It was never some grand act of kindness. He was already going that way. And our mother said it'd look good for him to act responsible. He never asked how my day was, never waited for me after. Some days, he made me wait on the sidewalk while he flirted with girls in the parking lot. But I said thank you every single time. I said thank you when I left for college, dragging a battered suitcase down the front steps while he slept in. I said thank you when I got my first job in a clinic with broken AC and patients who paid in quarters. I said thank you when I sent money home after Dad died. And David was nowhere to be found. But now he wanted a piece of what he never helped build. I pulled him aside. Away from the cameras in the crowd. What are you doing? I whispered. Getting what's mine, he said. You think you got here on your own? I did. I said, you gave me rides. I gave you years of my life trying to make this family proud. We're not even... His face tightened. You always thought you were better. That hurt, not because it was true, but because it came from someone who never once asked what it cost me to climb out of where we came from. I walked away, not out of anger, but because if I stayed, I would have screamed. He didn't follow, but I knew this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. My name was on the sign, but now he thought it belonged to him too. And my mother, well, she didn't say a word. She just watched me leave, like she'd been waiting to see how much I'd give up this time. The next morning, my mother called me before I'd even had coffee. I hope you're going to do the right thing, she said without greeting. I stared at the phone in disbelief. Good morning to you too. Mom, I'm serious. Emily, she snapped. David has a point. You wouldn't be where you are if it weren't for him. I laughed. Out loud. It wasn't funny, but it was either that or scream. Mom, I said slowly. He drove me to school 27 years ago, and we fed you. Didn't we? Put a roof over your head? Paid for your clothes? I went quiet. Not because she was right, but because I had no idea where this twisted math was coming from. You were our golden child, she continued. We gave everything to you. And now you're rich and forget your family. I closed my eyes. I wasn't rich. I had worked for every dollar. I reinvested in my clinics, paid my employees before I paid myself, gave free services to patients who had nothing, but that didn't matter to her. To her, success meant I had more than them, and more meant I owed. You know what I said. I think we need some space. You always think you're better than us. Emily, her voice dropped to a hiss. But you're not. I hung up. For the first time in my adult life, I didn't apologize for it. 2 days later, David showed up at my clinic. Not the one in Brookridge, the one in Fairlake. An hour away, he walked right in during patient hours, looked around like he owned the place, and cornered my office manager, Nina, with questions about payroll. Nina called me in a panic. Who is this man? He says he's part owner. I drove over there myself, heart pounding. I found him in the break room, drinking my staff's coffee. You need to leave, I said. He didn't move. You think locking me out's going to change the truth? There is no truth here. David, I said, my voice shaking. You're not a partner. You never were. You don't get to walk into my business and claim ownership because you were kind to me once when we were teenagers. Kind. He scoffed. That wasn't kindness. That was sacrifice. You have no idea what I gave up for you. I stared at him. What did you give up? David. Parties, sleep opportunities. Because I don't remember you turning down college or skipping meals to fund my future. I remember you leaving home at 19 and never looking back. His eyes darkened. I could have done something with my life. I nodded, and I could have fallen apart. But I didn't. He left eventually, but not before muttering, You'll see, you're not above family. I spent that night going through old files. I dug out every loan statement, every payroll stub, every receipt from the years I spent building my business brick by brick. I scanned them, archived them. I didn't know what David had planned, but I knew my family they didn't threaten unless they were already halfway through the act. The next day, I got the letter, a demand from David's lawyer, formal compensation for his early contributions to the success and mobility of Emily Carson. No dollar amount, just intent. I laughed so hard I cried, but the laughter didn't last, because tucked into the envelope was a statement signed by my mother confirming David's essential role in my formative years. She wrote about the rides, the groceries, the encouragement. She wrote that she and my father always intended for David to be recognized for what he gave. And that's when I realized I hadn't just been raised, I'd been invested in, like a stock. And now, they were ready to cash out. I don't know what stunned me more, the fact that my brother had hired a lawyer, or the fact that my mother had signed that letter like it was some sacred truth. They made it sound so noble, like David had laid down his life so I could rise. But I remembered the truth. I remembered him skipping school and blaming me when our parents found out. I remembered the girls he picked up in the truck while I waited on the curb with a backpack and a flute case, freezing in the Ohio wind. And yet here he was, rewriting history. And there she was, signing her name under it. I sat alone in my office that night, staring at the paper until the words blurred. I wasn't angry, not yet. I was tired in that deep, bone-hollow way that only family can make you feel. I thought of all the years I had tried to stay connected, the holidays I flew home for, the care packages I sent after Dad died, the checks I quietly mailed when Mom couldn't cover the furnace repair. None of it was enough, because I didn't give them control, and that was the real crime. The next day, I called my lawyer. "Can we respond?" I asked. "With facts." "Absolutely," she said. "But I'll be honest, this isn't about money. This is emotional warfare. They're trying to wear you down until you hand them something just to make them stop." She was right, and it scared me. So I did something I hadn't done in years. I called Rosa. She was the one person who knew everything. College dorm nights, panic attacks, the part-time jobs, the ramen diets, the professors I begged for extensions while working night shifts at a copy center. When she picked up, I didn't even say hello. I just said, "It's happening. They want a cut." She didn't ask who they were. She just said, "Of course they do. Parasites always show up after the harvest." I laughed. A dry, bitter sound. "Do you think I owe them anything, Emily? You don't even owe them a returned call." And just like that, the fog in my brain started to clear. I didn't owe them my peace. I didn't owe them the roof over my head, the plaque on my wall, or the paycheck I fought for every single month. And I certainly didn't owe them my silence. That weekend, I accepted an invitation to speak at a women's business conference. I was scheduled to talk about mental resilience and entrepreneurship. But when I got on stage, something shifted. The script I'd written sat in my hands, untouched. I looked out at the audience and said, "Sometimes, the first people who tell you you're not enough are the ones who share your last name. And when you finally become more than they expected, they call it betrayal." The room went still. I told my story, not the family-friendly version, not the polished speech. I told them about the guilt, the expectations, the emotional ransom, how I had become a product in my own home, something they believed they were owed dividends from. I finished with this: "There's a difference between gratitude and servitude. Don't let anyone confuse the two." After the speech, I received more letters than I could read in one sitting. Women and men who'd been through the same thing, who had been someone's retirement plan, someone's guilt trip, someone's emotional ATM. And somewhere between their words and mine, I realized I wasn't alone, but I had been quiet too long. So the next week, I sat down and wrote a letter, not to my brother, not to my mother, to their lawyer. It was short. Any future communication must go through counsel. There will be no financial settlement. There is no shared ownership. There is no debt. There is only distance. And for the first time in my life, I felt like I wasn't the one waiting on the curb. I was the one driving away. I didn't expect silence to be so loud. After the letter went out, there were no phone calls, no emails, no knocks at the clinic door, just nothing. A cold, deliberate stillness, like the kind that settles in just before a storm breaks open the sky. But the damage had already been done. I stopped going online for a while. I couldn't look at the passive-aggressive comments on my social media friends of my mother's, neighbors from back home, all weighing in like armchair judges. She forgot who raised her. Some people get a little money and lose all sense of loyalty. Family first until it's inconvenient. I wasn't surprised to see those names. I'd seen the same faces looking away when my father drank too much, or when my brother yelled at me in the driveway, or when Mom threw guilt like it was the only language she knew how to speak. Still, it hurt. Rosa invited me over that Friday. No speeches, just wine and a quiet porch swing. We didn't talk for the first half hour. I think she knew I was too raw for words. Finally, I asked, "What if they really believe I'm the bad one?" She looked me square in the eyes. "They need to believe that, because the alternative is admitting they used you, and people would rather rewrite the story than admit they were never the heroes." I exhaled like I'd been holding my breath for years. That weekend, I got a text from Linda David's ex-wife. We'd only ever spoken a handful of times, usually in passing, but this time, she wanted to meet in person. We met at a diner 2 towns over. She came alone. No makeup. Hair pulled back. Looking tired in the way women get when they've been strong for too long. I saw the letter. She said, skipping pleasantries. And I'm sorry. I didn't know what to say. She sipped her coffee, staring at the tabletop. He did the same thing to me. Said I owed him. Said he sacrificed everything for our family. But he never once worked overtime. Never took the night shift when our kid was sick. You gave him something he never had, a narrative. That word hit hard. Narrative. He'd been building it for years. Hadn't he? The rides, the sacrifice, the claim that my success was a joint venture he'd co-signed with every errand, every lift, every begrudging moment of effort. He'd turned my life into his alibi. And Mom? She just co-signed the lie. I left him, Linda said, because one day I realized I wasn't a wife. I was an IOU. I reached across the table and touched her hand. Thank you for telling me. On the drive home, I passed through the old neighborhood, just once, just to see it again. The house hadn't changed much. Same crooked mailbox, same plastic flamingos in the neighbor's yard. The porch still sagged to one side. Like even the foundation was tired of holding everything up. I didn't stop, but I did remember. I remembered carrying my backpack while David honked from the driveway. Annoyed I wasn't faster. I remembered hiding acceptance letters under my bed because I didn't want to hear Mom say they were too far away. I remembered the look on my father's face when I left for college, part pride, part resentment, like I'd escaped something he wasn't allowed to. When I got home, I sat down at my desk and started a new speech. Not for a stage, not for an audience. For me, I wrote down every lie I'd ever swallowed to keep the peace. Every time I'd said thank you, when what I meant was, please stop. Every time I showed up to prove I was a good daughter, good sister, good soldier, in a war I never enlisted in. I wrote until my hand cramped. Then I folded the pages, tucked them in a drawer, and poured myself a glass of wine. And for the first time, I toasted myself, not for surviving them, but for no longer needing their permission to live. The funny thing about walking away is how quiet it gets once you do. Not peaceful at first, just quiet. No more late-night texts, no guilt-laced voicemails, no sudden visits or veiled threats about what the neighbors are saying. Just silence, like the kind that follows a final door closing. At first, I didn't know what to do with it. For so long, my life had been built around anticipating their next emotional ambush. I'd trained myself to flinch before the blow even came. Now there was nothing, and in that nothing, I started to hear myself again. I hired a new regional manager for the clinic, someone kind, competent, and deeply grounded in patient care. I began taking Fridays off. I started gardening. Of all things, something about watching things grow slowly and without apology made sense to me in a way it never had before. People asked questions. Of course, a few whispered that I'd abandoned my family. One woman, an old neighbor from childhood, stopped me in the grocery store and said, "You know, your brother's been through a lot." I smiled politely and kept walking, because so had I. But I didn't wear my pain like a badge. I didn't use it as currency, and I didn't weaponize it to claim pieces of other people's peace. That was the difference. A year later, I was nominated for a community award, nothing fancy, just a small recognition from the county health board. They asked me to give a short speech at the dinner. I kept it brief. I was raised to believe that family means sacrifice, that love means owing, that the way to prove your worth is to pour yourself out until nothing's left. But I've learned that love given freely doesn't come with receipts, and the family that truly loves you doesn't keep score. When I stepped down from the podium, there was a standing ovation. But the best moment came later, during dessert, when a teenage girl approached me nervous, wide-eyed. "My mom made me come here tonight," she said. "But I'm glad she did. I think I'm going through what you went through." I didn't ask for details. I just handed her a business card and said, "You don't owe anyone your silence." We smiled at each other like survivors. Later that night, I received a letter in the mail, handwritten, no return address. It was from my nephew David's son. He said he was applying to technical school, that he wanted to be a mechanic, that he'd heard what happened. And while he didn't want to pick sides, he wanted me to know he saw it, all of it. He ended the letter with 6 words. "Thank you for staying kind anyway." I cried, not because I needed his validation, but because I realized I hadn't gone numb after all. There was still softness in me, still hope. I sent him a check for his books, quietly, without a name on it, because that's what generosity should be, something given, not leveraged. And now I live in a small house with a big window that catches the morning light. I make strong coffee and listen to records from the 70s while I water the plants. My clinics run smoothly. My days are quieter. My nights are warmer. Sometimes I drive past the old neighborhood, just to remind myself how far I've come. I don't go in. I don't need to, because the people who once made me feel small now live only in my memory. And that version of me, the one who kept paying and paying, hoping it would someday be enough, she doesn't live here anymore. The woman who lives here knows what she's worth, and she doesn't hand that over just because someone showed up with a dusty truck and a bitter story. Sometimes, the people we love most are the ones who chain us the tightest with guilt, with old favors, with the kind of loyalty that feels more like leverage than love. Emily's story isn't rare. It's a mirror for so many who've been told they owe their family simply for surviving them. But the truth is, gratitude is not a contract. You can be thankful without being taken. You can be kind without being controlled. What Emily discovered is what many of us take a lifetime to learn. Real family doesn't keep score. Real love doesn't demand receipts. And your success is not a community chest waiting to be split among those who once watched you struggle. If you've ever felt the pressure to give back in ways that drained your spirit, you're not alone. And if you've ever walked away to protect your peace, you didn't betray anyone. You saved yourself. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Have you ever had to draw boundaries with family? Was it hard? Worth it? Leave a comment below. Share your story. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more true stories that speak to the heart and the strength it takes to stand alone.